if a teacher is like, you have to play a certain way and is trying to beat that out of you in some way, shape or form, get a different teacher.
Hey Emma, what drum kit do you use?
Am I too old to start playing drums?
Should I get lessons?
How do I play that?
drums
When will I start sounding good?
So today's podcast is going to be all about self-taught musicians and are they holding themselves back? So Emma, is this the case?
Are we talking like 100% self-taught, never had a drum lesson, never gonna have a drum lesson? Because I think that's an important thing to kind of talk about.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
I think you can call yourself a self-taught drummer even if you had like maybe a handful of like one-to-one lessons, because I think there is almost limitless benefit to having like just someone look at your hands and go, you just need to tweak this, this and this, and that's it. Like if you're self-aware enough as a player, it's usually multi-instrumentalists who are already kind of self-aware enough, already know how to practice in general, know what they need to look for when it comes to tweaking small things in playing in general. So they don't really need as much guidance as if you're like a non-musician. So let's go from the perspective of you're a non-musician and you don't plan on getting any drum lessons. I think, yes, there's amazing resources. Like you've got Drumeo, you've got YouTube, you've got limitless things where you can even slow down video and look at people's hands and really get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. But you have to have that self-awareness that you're doing something wrong in the first place to be able to know and correct that. And I think you kind of need someone who is already playing to be able to go, you need to change this, 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 and this, because it will make things infinitely better. And you can resolve any issues you have in a way shorter space of time because you're not developing the muscle memory incorrectly and then having to teach it to yourself way later down the line. So I think it doesn't mean you have to have consistent lessons, but I think having at least a few where people are like, you need to correct this, this and this, or maybe like a check-in with someone who knows how to play the instrument, I think that's incredibly beneficial. What's the actual question again?
Self-taught, are you holding yourself back?
Are you holding yourself back? Depends what you want to do, I think, because you could overthink and get really technical and be like, I will never play in front of anyone until I'm perfect. But that could happen whether you're having lessons or not.
But at that point, a good teacher, coach, mentor should be able to, within the right time frame for you, get you out of that, right? That's part of their job.
Yeah.
That is part of what they're
100%.
So if they were good, then
I think if given the option, definitely take lessons 100%, even if it's like a few. You don't have to keep doing it forever. But yes, in short, I think yes, you are holding yourself back.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting as well because what is self-taught? It's self-taught when you've just got a book and you're reading through a self-taught using an online platform that maybe have question and answers that you can do. They might be able to submit a video, watch it back. There could be all these different things. Is that self-taught now? Where's the line of self-taught?
I mean, actually, you could go even further than that. Like, you are still teaching yourself regardless of if you're having lessons because you're the one putting the work in and doing it.
For sure.
So it gets real ambiguous. But I mean, if we're being real, it means you're having lessons or you're not. I think I've said my piece on that one.
Okay, so I think, and then so let's look at it specifically to a few particular like demographics of people. Then, so you're somebody that's first started out, you're a non-musician. I think the short answer, as you said, is yes, because you're going to end up developing a lot of bad habits, and so that's holding you back a lot. And unless you're an extremely self-aware person, and even then, you've not got enough reference. Now, you could use videos, you could film yourself and watch yourself back, and you could still do that self-taught and figure that out. But let's be honest, anything new that you don't have anything to go on is that's extremely hard. And there's a finite amount of people that probably can pull that off.
And also there's the aspect of like you having that motivation every week or every 2 weeks or whatever. Like
Yeah.
being given that new piece of information you would never have found otherwise, or being able to ask those questions that are frustrating you directly to someone who can answer those questions.
Yeah.
Like that's invaluable. The more you can remove the element of frustration when it comes to learning something new, the better it's going to be, and the longer you're going to do it for, more likely.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. I think that is the role of having somebody to come in and help you with that, right? Just purely motivation. If you take going to the gym as an example, what most people have tried to do, right? I'm pretty sure if you have a personal trainer, your chance of success at keeping that up is probably substantially higher,
infinitely higher.
Yeah, and so it's the same thing with an instrument. There's no difference between the two things, and that's just motivation, right? Let's say you are extremely self-motivated and you don't need anybody to motivate you, which again is a small percentage, but let's say you're in that bracket. It's then knowing that you're practicing the right thing and developing all the right habits that you haven't got to go back and spend hours of time undoing.
But then the issue is a lot of people have to self-teach themselves because they can't find the teachers anywhere. But that's the benefit of online teaching.
Yeah.
That it just instantly makes things accessible to everybody. Of course, there's going to be some slight downsides to online teaching. You can't physically grab someone by the hand and go, no, it's like this. But you shouldn't have to, really.
No, and it makes
that
you
benefit.
You know, having online lessons, right? I think obviously we're biased to this because we run an online music school. So,
yes,
but having said that, having run an in-person music school and taught hundreds, if not thousands of people, the school's gone certainly into the thousands. My experience personally and feedback from many teachers across many different instruments, not even just drums, is on Zoom, the student has to be more independent, and therefore long term you're then more likely to be able to be more self-taught after having that initial set of lessons, because you're going to have more self-awareness and you're going to be able to find the right resources. And your job as an online teacher is to set somebody up to be able to use those resources successfully by themselves and teach a lot of it by themselves, right? So whereas when they're coming to you in person, you can get away with it. Guitar teachers do this a lot, just have their guitar with them the whole time. Like one of the things we did with the in-person lessons when we were running the studio is we were like guitar teachers. We put guitar hooks up on the wall everywhere. Like you're not allowed to sit and teach with the guitar in your lap. And it sounds like a really dumb thing, but what was happening, all they're doing is demonstrating, and that's not a good way to retain information, right? So actually what happens is by default that the medium forces the student to be more independent and actually become good at teaching themselves. And your role moves more towards being a coach and mentor at that point and keeping someone motivated than actually doing the ins and outs. Obviously there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah, I think one more aspect to it is like people have either you're mostly self-taught and you've had like one lesson with one bad teacher and that puts you off lessons forever, or you hear bad things about music teachers, which there's plenty of horror stories. And I think people get stuck in that a little bit as well. But I don't think that's something that should hold people back. Definitely not. Like
that's
being able
really
to go,
true.
no, I'm going to try this again with a different person. You just have to find someone that clicks. And again, that's where online benefits, because the person you click with can be in the UK while you have lessons from Australia. That happened to me yesterday. I was doing a taster who was in Australia. So it just opens the whole thing up, really.
It does, yeah. And then the next set of people is like, so you play another instrument and you've dabbled in jumping on the drum kit when in rehearsals everyone's taking a break to go have a cigarette or do whatever, and you're like, jumping on the kit, that's how I've learned guitar predominantly. And piano is using those opportunities, right, or everyone swaps around for a little bit. And then those people, again, they often have the musicality, the musicianship, but it's a technique thing at that point, right? And so just having a handful of lessons like spread out is just going to give you a much higher chance of having a good technique, because instruments that use, I mean, again, whether you're the fine line, what's self-taught or not. I had a bunch of guitar lessons sporadically when I was at school, but I would say I'm generally self-taught, right? The majority of the time has been me teaching myself.
I think that's me with piano as well.
Yeah,
I had lessons for a little while.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, I feel like I'm a bit of a crossbreed of taught and self-taught, kind of.
That's interesting. Yeah, you're still, like, technique-wise, it'd be interesting for someone to probably assess you, wouldn't you? See where you're at with it, because your piano
There
playing,
you go.
like, abilities.
You play piano like a drummer.
Yes. Yeah, that is generally what drummers do with piano. Just smash the keys. And, yeah, and I think so. That's in regards to that. Again, it's those musicians. I would say that it's good to have some lessons in that, and it doesn't necessarily need to have to be weekly, right, all the time, but just dropping in. Like, I think back, I call myself self-taught on guitar, but at the same time, if I didn't have those lessons, I probably would have not been set up as well, and that's hugely important to
and it's
the
things
rest
you
of the
wouldn't
trajectory.
have sought out as well. It's not the kind of thing you can look up on YouTube because it's not something you're consciously aware of. So it's again having that person to show you what's going on a little bit better, things you aren't thinking about, because there will be many things you're not thinking about while you're imagining yourself in a huge arena, absolutely smacking the hell out of drums, which is completely valid, by the way.
You're right. No, that's a really good point. And something that I say to my students all the time is, like, when you're learning something new, if you think about yourself as a computer, you have CPU, right? And you have 100% capacity on a CPU, and reading music is maybe taking up 25% CPU. So that's like one application running in the background. Another thing is the physically playing maybe is taking up 60%, right? So we've got 85% CPU being taken care of. Now, if you're going to count, maybe that's another 10. We're at 95. So if all of a sudden you have to add a new technique in, for example,
that's why people stop breathing.
And you crash. Yeah,
people stop breathing.
Yeah, that's happened. And so that's where a teacher will be able to introduce the right things at the right point for you to make sure that you don't hit that threshold constantly and just keep crashing and burning.
The amount of times I have to tell students just to relax consciously, all the time, like having just someone there to do that is really useful.
For sure. And then I guess then the last set, that this is for now the professionals, like, you know, let's call it like, now you've had all the training. Should you continue now being self-taught after having had or gone and done the degree? Maybe it had really fantastic teachers over the years, and maybe you're at a really high level. You're a session player. Let's take that as an example. Should you continue the rest of your journey self-taught, right? And I think, again, it depends on each and every person, but I think you'd find that most people would probably benefit from having something.
I'd say every single person would benefit from, I think everyone benefits from seeing someone who's better than them doing something that they want to do, or at a specific thing, because something like any subject, like any instrument, any art form, it is an infinite plane of possibilities and new things. Even if you feel like you've got to, you're kind of like, you just kind of get in a rut and yada yada. That's just because you've run out of new things that you know about. But talk to someone else and they've got infinitely endless, more chops, more everything on certain styles, certain, I don't know, techniques. Like, it just is endless. So talking to someone who knows more about that, you're always going to benefit from that, even if it's the tiniest thing, or even if it's the realizing you don't want anything to do with that said thing. That's still gaining knowledge. Yeah,
it definitely is. And actually, a good example of this at being at professional level is where we've traded ideas. So I can do my thing that I can do, you can do your thing that you can do, and we're teaching each other. Like, that's now no longer self-taught. We're like showing each other things that we've been working on. So even like just getting a group of you that are at a certain level that meet up, hang out online, whatever. I think that's not self-taught anymore. You're teaching each other, and that's a group environment, and no one's even leading that teaching. It's just like, hey, I can do this set of things. If you tried this, oh, that's cool, for inspiration. So
I mean, a good way to think about it as well is like, we've done from the get-go, being born, nothing we've done has been self-taught.
Yeah.
If you think about maybe breathing, all right, I'll give you that. But like, fundamentally we're taught to do everything. We've been taught how to learn.
Mhm.
So we're always continually learning from each other all the time. So to say we're self-taught or not is, we've just been taught a certain way, I think.
Yeah,
That's probably a better way of looking at it.
that is true. No one is self-taught anything.
Because there is a stigma. I think
Everything's-
there's a little bit of a stigma as well around being self-taught.
Yeah. I think it's, and also a lot of people that classify themselves as self-taught are very proud about it as well. I think they find if they got to, I've been self-taught, and they almost won't take lessons when they probably know that they need them, just because they don't want to like be unself-taught.
Lose the title.
Now,
The
one of the
badge.
biggest ones
Yeah.
I've heard with this one, which I just don't believe in, is that someone's going to take away my uniqueness by then teaching me, right? I have singers talk about this a lot, like it all being ironed out. It's like, no, you just got more control. You can carry, if you lose the ability to sing how you previously could sing, unless it was damaging your vocals, for example, in which case you have to stop at some point regardless, right? Then
It will
like
only improve.
you're only going to be able to do more stuff, like, and
it
even
only
the best.
enables you to express yourself better than you did before, easier and in a more healthy way. It's the same with drums and good technique. It's good technique overall.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right then. Anything else?
Also, a note on that: if a teacher
cool.
is like, you have to play a certain way and is trying to beat that out of you in some way, shape, or form, get a different teacher. Actually, that's an open question, because you might be doing something that you think is right and they think is wrong, and that could lead to some interesting conversations about that. But as a general rule, if there's someone like, you need to play it like this, like, that's usually something to raise a question about. Maybe ask why. See how they answer that one.
That's really, really valuable.
Because if they say it's just the way it is,
maybe the next podcast can continue then with how to choose a good teacher and what to look out for, because I think that's something that's quite difficult. And if you do want to choose,
well, it's
you
very
are
relative.
looking at doing that, what we can discuss how
after.
maybe you could go about that. Yeah.
Sure.
And also, you might have one teacher for one period of time, one teacher for another period of time, and I think people get into this like everything's always for life, like for life. Everyone thinks about everything being a commitment for life, like, and actually sometimes it's not about that. But just on your last point, to wrap that up with the teacher telling you that you must or mustn't do something. Like, for me, I think the easiest way to look at this is that as long as the end result is good, it's good. It's like a little quote from mine. What I mean by that is, as long as the technique that you're playing doesn't damage you in any way or doesn't hold you back from being able to do what you want to do. Let's say you want to be able to play 16th notes around the drum kit at like 200 beats per minute, unless that and that technique enables you to do that without injuring yourself, then what's the problem? There isn't one. However unorthodox or anything that may be, that doesn't matter, does it? But if you can't get that speed because of the technique, and the teacher's trying to get you to do a new one to get you to get that speed, right? Well, that's obviously a good thing generally. And if it's like you can get that speed, but you can't hold that for any period of time, and you have to do that for 2 hours on stage. Again,
I think it's more of a lack of openness. I think is something to be aware of in teachers. If they're not open to being like, oh, this is the way you want to do this, it does work. So I'm not going to be like, you like to iron that out of someone if it doesn't have to be. Like, think about how many drummers, especially going back, like, part of what made them unique was the weird way they did stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't recommend you go and do some Buddy Rich posture at this point. But like, yeah. Anyway.
I think you're right. I think that's actually it's a really good point, Emma. Yeah, that's cool. I think that's good to wrap it up there.
Great.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Right then.
All right.
Quoting you, big love, and we will see you on the next one.
To be self-taught or not to be self-taught? That is the question, and hopefully we've answered that for you. And if you have any thoughts on that, let me know down in the comments. Other than that, feel free to check out the other podcasts that we've done. Firstly, on coordination, because let's face it, as drummers, we're pretty useless at it for quite some time, and it's a hell of a thing to master. Or your key priorities as a drummer. Whatever that means. That's quite ambiguous, and I'm going to keep it ambiguous because that's way more interesting, and the mystery might even draw you in. Let's go with that.